McLaughlin, and I'm here today to talk to you about how we as educators can observe possibly trauma, abuse, depression in our students by observing their artwork, particularly their paintings and their drawings. Now, we're not professionals, we're not therapists, we're not counselors, but we can assist these professionals if we know what to look for. For a start, I want to talk about the stages that children's drawings go through throughout history and throughout the world. The first stage is called scribbling, and that's the first thing that a child does. It doesn't mean anything to us, but it's scribbling to them. It may mean something, we don't know. The next stage is about 1 to 4 years old. It's called pre-schematic. And in this stage, we begin to see a little bit of realism. We can see some eyes, we see a mouth. We call it the tadpole stage because they tend to make people look like tadpoles. The next stage is schematic, and that's about 5 to 7 years old. In this stage, again, we begin to see more realism. The people typically don't have necks, but we see more proportion, a little bit more realism. In this stage also, odd thing around the world, children throughout history, throughout the world, if they're asked to draw a house, their house, they will draw a chimney with smoke coming out of it regardless of whether their house has a chimney or not. Researchers don't know why. They say it may mean that there's life within the house. Another thing that occurs in this stage is nothing to be alarmed with is called transparency. And it's where they will draw a person with their body underneath the clothes but still showing. That's not a cause for alarm. The last stage is called realism. That's 7 years and up. In realism, we begin to get shading, we get shadows, we get perspective, we get a much more realistic human figure. Keep in mind, though, that less than half of 15-year-olds will ever reach this stage. Most of them will stay here. But these are the two stages we're concerned with when we're looking for signs of trauma, depression, or abuse. That's sexual or physical. We're just talking about these stages. What are we looking for? Briefly, I'm going to put this up. For general trauma, that could be a catastrophe of some sort. The size of people in a family portrait. One person may be way outsized, a father, a stepfather. Something else you're looking for is they'll draw a family portrait and they'll make themselves very small and away from the rest of the family. That could indicate family problems. Self-soothing behavior. The child, instead of drawing something, will tap or do scribbles, and he's got a faraway look in his eye. Floating houses or houses with scribbles around them is often an indication of abuse at home. Explosive fantasies. Boys around age 11 who are having problems at home or anger issues will draw people or buildings being blown up. Long, narrow houses is another indication of trauma. What we call artistic regression, where the child is in perhaps this pre-schematic stage and all of a sudden he goes back to this stage. Or he's in the realism stage and he goes back to this stage. That can be an indication. Repetition, especially with sad or violent drawings, over and over again. Lots of black and red. Another interesting one is a black sun. They will draw a black sun. They draw themes of rescue. They're being rescued, people being rescued, especially after a major catastrophe, an earthquake, something like that. Excessive shading. Now, I showed some shading here in the realistic stage, but there's excessive shading. The whole picture may be shaded. Signs of depression. Dead plants or trees being drawn. Suicide or murder themes in their drawings. Another interesting one is the child uses a third or less of the available paper. You give them a big piece of paper, they'll draw everything in one corner. He uses very little color, and he'll draw himself or herself in isolation, or if they're asked to draw themselves, they draw themselves very ugly. Tears and rain. Now this one, my friend was a teacher for many years. A young Navajo boy drew this, and if you can see it, it's a picture of him with his horse in isolation with a rain cloud over him. She asked him why he drew this, why he drew the rain cloud only on him, and his answer was, "It always rains just on me." She knew he was depressed. This was a pure indication. Sexual abuse. That's a little harder to detect sometimes. They draw genitalia, girls and boys. Exaggerated sexiness, particularly with young girls. They'll draw themselves or female figures with big boobs or long tongues or lots of makeup, very sexy looking clothes. They draw phallic symbols. And the last is, and this is an interesting one as well, is they draw The girls will draw the upper body only when asked to draw themselves or draw a female figure. They'll draw from here up. Again, these are just indications. We're not professionals. But if you see these kind of signs in your students, that's an opportunity to look and see what else might be happening. If you see a girl who's drawing some of these indicators of abuse, she might also be not taking care of herself, not talking to her friends. We're not going to report to authorities. We don't call the parents. We don't sound the alarm. We don't sound the alarm. What we need to do is talk to the counselor. Tell the counselor what we're seeing. Work with the counselor. Questions?
You've concentrated on drawings and paintings only. Aren't there other mediums that could be useful in determining problems?
There are, and some researchers have studied clay, for example. But we concentrate on drawings because throughout history that's been the most abundant medium. So most researchers have concentrated on that area. We've got the most data.
You state that drawing genitalia can be an indication of sexual abuse, but we know that teenagers draw lots of phallic symbols and female anatomy. Are these signs of abuse?
No, and that's a good point because we know when they hit puberty, the boys like to draw the penises and the boobs. I mean, that's not a problem. I'm more concerned with children around 10 or 11 years old who should not be drawing these kind of things. An example, an 11-year-old boy drew a picture of a man with the penis, with the hair, underarm hair, very detailed drawing. Teachers and counselors investigated. He was being sexually abused by his stepfather.
How do we know when there's too much red or black or shading? How much is too much?
Well, and once again, we don't know. What we're looking for is a pattern. You have a kid who comes in just one morning and he draws a lot of black or red. Maybe he got in an argument with his parents or his sibling. But if it becomes a pattern day in and day out, and you begin to notice other things, he's not cleaning himself, he's defiant, then we may have a problem. Thank you.